So students, we were revising chapter power sharing grade 10th. Until now we have revised the concept of power sharing. We have seen the ethnic composition of Belgium and Sri Lanka, the case studies of both the countries we have seen, and then we have seen the majoritarian policy adopted by the Sri Lankan leaders, and then we have seen the accommodation policy adopted by the Belgian leaders. So this we have discussed so far, and now why power sharing is desirable. Now we have to discuss why power sharing is desirable. So power sharing is desirable due to the two reasons, that is prudential reasons and the moral reasons. So here the two reasons which we have to discuss for why power sharing is desirable. Now prudential reasons, these are based on careful calculations of gains and losses. So these reasons are based on our wisdom and judgment. So these reasons, the prudential reasons of power sharing, they stress that power sharing is desirable because it brings out the better outcomes. So here the potential reasons are there and the moral reasons are there. So these reasons will bring the better outcome. Now, in case of prudential reasons, we have to see that these are based on careful calculations of gains and losses. So it is based entirely on our wisdom and judgment when we take this decision that power sharing is very essential and it will bring the better outcomes. Now, these regions help to reduce the possibility of conflict between the social groups or between the social divisions. So, we have seen why power sharing is desirable, because it avoids or it reduces the possibility of conflict between the two social groups. Like in the case of Sri Lanka, we have seen that power sharing was not done by the Sinhala community, so that's why the conflict arises between Sinhalas and the Tamils, especially the Sri Lankan Tamils, and this led to the civil war in the country. So this thing we have seen, and if we will do power sharing, it will ensure the stability of political order also. If the majority community will suppress the minority community, or the government will not provide any share to the minority community or to the different communities and regions in the country, then the conflict will arise, and it will be very difficult for the government also to run the government in a stable manner. So there will be instability also of the political order if we will not do power sharing. But if power sharing is done and power is shared among different political parties, different communities in region, then it will ensure the stability of political order. Then after that, imposing the will of the majority community over the minority, it looks very attractive in the short run, but it will undermine the unity of the nation. Okay, for a short period, we can suppress the minority community in whichever way majority wants, but it will affect the unity and integration of a country. If we will practice this for long run, then the repercussions for country will not be good. It can lead to a disintegration or disharmony or conflict in the country. Then then the tyranny of the majority community is oppressive. Certainly it is oppressive for the minority, but it will affect the majority community also. So the cruelty of the majority community is oppressive, no doubt, for the minority, but it will ruin the majority community also, because if this kind of approach will be adopted by the majority group, then conflict will arise, and if conflict will arise, disturbance will be there, disharmony will be there in the country, and this will affect the majority community also. Terrible setback will be there to the economy also, production also, and culture also, like we have seen in the case of Sri Lanka. So that's why power sharing is desirable, and the prudential reasons called for power sharing is desirable because it brings the better outcomes. It will bring the better outcomes if power sharing is done. And examples, like we have done the reservation of constituencies for minorities and women in India. So this we have done, reservation we are providing to the minorities, to the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes of this minority section, so that they should not feel alienated, because this is marginalized section of our society, that is minorities. So they should not feel alienated, that none of the Indian leaders or the government is taking care of our interests. So that's why the reservation is given to them in elections also through reserved constituencies. So these were the potential reasons. Now we have to see the moral reasons. So this is purely based on moral considerations. These are purely based on your ethics. when we are saying that it is a very spirit of a democracy, power sharing is a very spirit of democracy, then we have to do power sharing in a democratic setup. So suppose if I am saying that I am a very honest person, but I am indulged in malpractices also, I am indulged in wrong practices, then do I fit in the definition of honesty? Do I fit in the definition of that I am very honest person? No. Similarly, if I'm saying that power sharing is the very spirit of a democracy, then in democracy we have to do power sharing. It is a very spirit of a democracy. So in democracy, we are providing universal franchise. We are providing independent, free, and fair elections. So apart from this, we have to do power sharing also with different communities and regions of our country. And here this is considered as the basic spirit of democracy, power sharing, and decentralization is the example of the moral reasons. So we have done decentralization. We have the three tires. We have 1992. We went for decentralization, in which the third tire was also added, the local government, and now means this is deepening of democracy. So decentralization. With decentralization, we have achieved deepening of democracy to even the grassroots level of our country. So decentralization, we have given power to the local level also. Why? Because the people at the local level, they have more better knowledge of their problems. They can take the solutions or solve their problems in a better way than the person who is sitting at the center or the state level. And similarly, if decentralization is done, if power is given to the local level, it will reduce the burden of the state and the center government as well. Empowering communities like women, minorities, providing reservations there. So this is all achieved through decentralization. So these were the, you can say, the why power sharing desirable, because of the prudential and the moral reasons. So the next is forms of power sharing. This is the last topic of our revision for chapter power sharing, forms of power sharing. Here the first is power is shared among different organs of the government. So this is horizontal distribution of power, that is between legislature, executive, and judiciary. So the different organs of the government are placed at the same level so that they can exercise their power, and there is a separation of power and balance is also maintained, and it restricts that none of the organ exercise unlimited power. So the system of checks and balance is also maintained by the horizontal distribution of power. Like if the parliament is there, then the government is formed by the party who is having absolute majority, but this government, they can't exercise unlimited power. They have to work within the parameters of constitutional jurisdiction, within the parameters of constitutional provision. So they can't, if the government is formed, it is not that they can exercise unlimited power and they will run the government in whichever way they want. So the next, the judiciary, the judges of Supreme Court and High Court, they are appointed by the president, and once they are appointed, they cannot be removed, and to remove them, very difficult process is there, that is impeachment. And after this, now when the laws are made by the legislature, then this judiciary, this interprets the meaning of that law properly, and if that law is not according to the provisions of the constitution, that law can be declared as null and void by the judiciary. So this is a provision of checks and balance, that each organ, it checks, and in this way the balance is maintained. So this is horizontal distribution of power, that is between different organs of the government. Next, power can be shared among government at different levels. So this is vertical distribution of power, that is union government, state government, and the local level. So this is your vertical distribution of power, and this is the federal structure where the center is there, then the state government, and then we have the lower level, that is the local government. And India, it is a holding together federation, and our center is more strong, and we have done decentralization, and we have given powers to our local level also. Then after that, power may also be shared among different social groups, such as religious and linguistic groups. Like in the case of Belgium, power is also shared in the form of community government, where each language group, they can form their own government, and that government, community government for each linguistic group, and they will take care of their all the cultural, all the language, all the educational related matters. So, community government, a very good example of this in the Belgium, and in our case also, like reservation is given to the minority communities. In our case, to women, to weaker section of the society, we give reservation. So that is also the example of when the power is shared among different social groups, religious and linguistic groups. Then last is power sharing among political parties. So, how power is shared among the political parties when none of the parties having absolute majority? Then the political parties they come together, whether it is national or regional, they come together and they form the coalition government. So, in this way, through coalition government, the power is shared among different political parties and pressure groups also. They put the pressure on the government so that the policy making should be in their favor, and they they participate in many of the government committees and meetings so that to put the pressure on the government so that the policy making is in their favor. And so this was the certain forms of power sharing in modern democracies: horizontal distribution of power, vertical distribution of power, and power is shared among different social groups and among political parties, pressure groups, and movements.